We are happy that the air is on this morning. We came in, turned the air down, and it was 85, and about an hour later it was 85. So we are thankful the air conditioner started working. We are game planning ways to not sweat together this morning. We are kind of last 2 weeks in this series, New Life, and then we get to go on to a very short 2-week series. It's called Books, Not Book. And it's going to be breaking down how we got the Bible, how we approach the Bible, sort of much less sermonic, much more hands-on, how to plow through the Bible. But we got 2 weeks left in New Life. So we've done our 4 kind of mission statements here for the church. We've done know God, love neighbor, live justice, forever. And so we've made it through those 4. And our last 2 weeks, we're going to look at some Biblish words. Everyone say Biblish. Biblish. It's a good word. It's those words that you hear a lot in faith or church communities that maybe we say that we don't have full meaning on all the way. And so we're going to unpack them because they're very foundational, I think, to continuing forward. So our word today is a word probably we've heard a lot and we say a lot, but maybe we don't fully approach it with like a full meaning behind it. So your Biblish word today is discipleship. Everyone say discipleship. All right. How many have heard that before? Or being a disciple? So just, you heard this? Okay, great. We're going to break this down, kind of see what Jesus here has to say about it, and go on. I'm going to read today from Luke 14, Luke 14, verses 25 there to the end of that chapter. It's 10 verses through 35. So if you have your Bible, pull it up, follow along. For me, it's page 1763. Not terribly helpful for many others. Luke's one of our 4 main Gospels. They're kind of where we get all the stories and actions of Jesus and his earthly mission. It's 4 different tellings of his time here on earth. So Luke is one of those 4 tellings. So let's read Luke 14:25 to the end. Large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them, he said, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate their father and mother, their wife, their children, their brothers and sisters, yes, even themselves, such person could not possibly be my disciple. And whoever doesn't carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Wouldn't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? You know, if you lay a foundation and you can't finish it, everyone's going to laugh at you saying, this person started to build but couldn't finish it. Or suppose a king is about to go to war with some other king. Wouldn't he first sit down and consider whether he's able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? I mean, if he's not able, he'll send a delegation, which is whether still a long way off, and ask for terms of peace. In this same way, those of you who do not give up everything cannot possibly be my disciples. Salt is good, but if it loses saltiness, how could it be made salty again? It's fit for nothing but soil and a pile of manure and is thrown out. Whoever has ears, let them hear." Who feels good about that one? Like, anybody feel real good about that story? Jesus there? Doesn't feel great. Something that I say a lot of times is we like the happy, gracie Jesus. We really like this one. We like the one, I always picture the Jesus, this is my image. You can use it and steal it if you'd like. I call him Ray-Ban Jesus. He's got, probably now it would be Chaco's shoes. He's on the beach. He's got a pair of Ray-Bans. There's like a blue sash, maybe like a surfboard, and his hair blowing in the wind. I picture that sort of the happy, gracie Jesus that's like, he's cool and interesting, and he's got cool shoes, and he must be really nice and cool. But this, not happy, did this passage, did anyone squirm in their seat ever so slightly on the words Jesus has for us here? I squirmed. I squirm when I read my way through this one. Imagine you're the disciples hearing this. So let's orient ourselves here again. Jesus, large crowds are following him, so all these people that are like seeing what he's about. And he turns to them and he says, if anyone comes to me and doesn't hate their family, that person can't be my disciple. I think the crowd probably sitting there thinking, so what did we get into here? This isn't how you recruit people to follow you in a movement. We squirm, I squirm, because you're supposed to. It's exceptionally strong language. My mom growing up would say things, I would say things like, oh, I really hate something. And she'd go, hate is a very powerful word. You just dislike it in the moment, right? Hate is a very powerful word. You squirm because you're supposed to. You squirm because you come to the idea of discipleship and following Jesus with so many misunderstandings about it. And so in this thing, we're going to break down what is Jesus saying, what is he not saying. And so we're going to look at some ways that rabbinical style teaching went to try to help this make sense. But the first thing is we squirm because we think about Jesus as if we are a modern culture with him. So how many of you are contemporaries, meaning you walked the earth with the people who walked the earth with Jesus? You would be a contemporary of Jesus himself. No one, right? We never did. How many of you would consider yourself an ancient Middle Eastern Jewish person? Good, we're all playing the same game. But we place our perspectives on this section here. And one of the things that I think about when we think about Jesus and recruiting people into a movement is I think a lot of something that seems to never end anymore in our modern society. I feel like this just happened and we're already there again. But we're in a never-ending season of election. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like, I don't know how midterms are already coming up, but there was a first ad on YouTube the other day, and I was like, it can't possibly be that season again. Where you turn on any television, thankfully we don't have broadcast TV anymore, we just watch Netflix, but you turn on anything and you're bombarded with speeches and commercials, and it'd be worse if we didn't live in Indiana. If you lived in Iowa or a swing state, it'd be all the time. And what's the purpose of a political ad? What are they trying to do? There we go. Persuading you specifically to vote for them. You with me? They're like, I have a vision. I want you to follow on board, and you can get on board by casting your vote for me at the ballot box. Imagine, though, watching a political campaign speech where at the end of it they go, if you vote for me, I have news for you. Things are going to get a lot harder. It's going to get a whole lot worse, and you're going to lose things. Probably not getting a lot of votes. You don't earn a lot of movement by telling people, by the way, if you vote for me, your life's going to be real bad. It's going to get worse. People are going to not like you. You're going to lose stuff. It's going to be hard. But Jesus here basically stands there and says that. Is Jesus losing it a little bit? He's got all these people following him and he's telling them how hard their life's going to be. And we look at it, we're like, he's nuts. He's out there. It's because we think of Jesus in this leadership position that's like a politician that's a civil servant. That's another great word, civil servant. That's 2 words technically. A civil servant, right? I have a vision of a good life for myself. I know what it means to be me. So when I go somewhere and I find someone who can be a civil servant for me as the sheriff, as the chief of police, as a local representative, as the school board, whatever it is, I go and I put my vote for the person who I think has the same vision of life as I do. I go, they know how I think I should be, and so that person is going to be for me where I can. So I find someone who can represent my vision of my life. So if you hear someone go up and talk, hey, by the way, if you vote for me, I'm going to make your life really horrible, by the way. It's going to be real bad. It violates this relationship of a civil servant, right? If they're not going to represent what I want, then this relationship doesn't work. I would look for somebody else. Does this make sense? What the difference, how we see a civil servant? You put them in a place to represent you. So if their version of what you could be doesn't match you, you wouldn't possibly support them. So we see Jesus as this sort of politician that we somewhat vote for. We go, hey, I have a vision. I think this guy's got something figured out, and I'm going to give my support to him. So we say, Jesus, I want you to come into my life here, and we have problems. So if you can get those problems worked out, that would be great. And also, I could use a little comforting. That would be great too. We know we see Jesus like a politician because When your life starts to fall apart, right? When something bad starts to go on and maybe your prayers aren't getting answered, or you're faced with some disasters down the pipeline that you maybe hadn't seen before, you get jaded. And I've done this before, and you have one of these prayers and you go, look, all right, so I did what it says to do in there, and I've been doing this, and I gave to that thing, and I'm not seeing, it just seems to not be working out, and I'm starting to wonder, maybe this isn't working like we thought. You ever had a little jaded prayer session where you have a come to Jesus moment with Jesus himself? I did everything you said, and it's not seeming to work. Because in our mind, Jesus serves our vision. Do you see this connection? And so when Jesus says something like he does in 14, must hate your family, even your own life, you can't possibly be a disciple, it doesn't feel like the relationship that we signed up for. It's not in the same terms that we see a politician, this relationship. But this is what he calls us into, not to represent and serve my vision of the good life, but the complete opposite, his vision. This relationship, this discipleship relationship, is way less like a politician, like the kid who's really good at three-pointers at the beginning. I love that video. He's way less like a kid running for school board. If you're trying to find funny political ad campaign, like videos that you can play to try to make a point, it's really hard to find one that you're like, no one could be possibly mad at this video. But we found the school board kid. He's way less like that. He's not soliciting all the great things he's going to do for you. He's way more like the mountaineer. Could you catch what the mountaineer was saying? This guy who leads people on journeys. If you climb the Himalayan mountain range, they're called Sherpas, the people that help you up the mountain. Say Sherpa. Sherpa. And what they do is they're guides to help you through the troubled passes of things. I used to be an avid video game player. I still am an avid video game player. I'm currently an unbelievable number of hours deep in Tears of the Kingdom, the new Zelda game, an unbelievable number of hours deep. If you saw on my Switch, it would be embarrassing, actually, at this point. But I used to play a game called Destiny, and in it you're like this space superhero-based guy, and it's a very difficult little game. And there's things that are called raids. They're very challenging. 6 people play them. The first time I played one, we failed miserably. About 2% into it, we'd been playing for like 6 hours, and it was a disaster. It was just impossible. And so once I got really good at it, what I started to do is I would Sherpa people on the raids. So I know all the encounters, I understand the mechanics, and I would take me and a couple friends, and we would take a few people that have never accomplished it before, and we would show them how to do it. We'd go step by step. We'd be like, all right, you stand here, and you stand here, and you stand here. Great, no one move at all. This is how we're going to beat this. It's called Sherpaing, and I got into doing that a little bit. But the idea with these mountaineers and these Sherpas, whether in any scenario, is when you're deep in the terrain, they know something. They see the trouble coming on the horizon. If you're going up a mountain and there's suddenly an avalanche coming through as a Sherpa, or you're mountaineering, they know what to do. They're like, all right, we need to do this, 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 and this. Or, okay, this is a bad thing that just happened in here. Everyone, we need to come over here, regroup, and do this. Essentially, you need to follow me because things are going to be hard on this journey. You may need to leave things behind on the mountain. Some of you might not make it to the summit and back. You need to follow me. This is dangerous. Jesus says that is a very different meaning for this scenario that he's leading them through. Because the Sherpa, the mountaineer, and Jesus aren't serving their own self-interest at all, but actually the interest of the people that are following them. The long-term well-being of those that were going to follow Jesus is what's in his mind, not their short-term happiness. And so Jesus warns them, and the mountaineers warn, and when I was doing Sherping, you warn them, hey, things are going to get dangerous and hard. It's going to hurt me, it's going to cost you. But if you want to reach the summit, if you want to get to the end, if you want to have life, you've got to tether on and follow. Because the mountaineer and Jesus are trying to rescue you from the things that you don't even perceive as dangers on the mountain. And if Jesus is a skilled Sherpa, if he's a skilled mountaineer, then he has every right to say these things through this entire section. Let's hear the sentences again. Okay, I'm going to read them. Don't make Jesus a politician asking you to vote for him, but someone who says, look, you don't know how dangerous the road is. I'm going to lay it out for you how you got to get through this if you want to get to the end. Let's keep this Sherpa Jesus in mind. Let's hear it again one more time. Large crowds were traveling. Turning to them, he said, if anyone comes to me and doesn't hate their father and mother, their wife, their children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person couldn't possibly be my disciple. He's talking to these crowds that are following him. This set is in the middle of a very long run of teaching Jesus does, all the way from Luke 9 to Luke 19. And in Luke 9, he starts this journey of being with his disciples as they walk to Jerusalem, where his story is going to come to the climax in the end. And so chapter 9 forward, he's traveling, and as he's teaching, more and more people start to follow and gather as he walks towards. They're swept up in these miracles. He's healing people. He's making more bread and fish and things appear when they shouldn't be able to do that. He's walking on water. People are seeing all this amazing stuff, and they're like, whoa, I got to see what's going on with this guy. The question, and this is where it's a little bit, you got to just think for a second and give a real honest answer here. For all these chapters, as people seeing the miracles, they start following him everywhere. They're going, and he turns and sees this crowd. Now, does every person standing in this crowd, do they all get Jesus? Like, does everybody in there, they've got him all worked out. They've got him fully figured out. No's? Am I seeing some no's? Good. Do they all know his exact identity? Who he really is at the core? No. Great. I like voices. It helps me understand. No, right? So the crowd is the same crowd that's going to get real confused when he enters into Jerusalem and he doesn't kick the Romans out right away. They're going to be the ones that are real confused when he goes into the temple and he flips over tables and starts like whipping people out of it. They're going to be like, what is this guy doing? They're going to be the ones who are confused when he claims he's the Son of God. This is the same crowd that follows him into Jerusalem that eventually will say, no, give us Barabbas. You keep him. The story is, just because you're in the crowd, just because you're following, just because you're meandering in the same direction as Jesus, it doesn't make you a disciple. When he has these crowds around him from Luke 9 and on, he says really tough things. This is the toughest of the things that he says. Why? He's trying to sift the crowd out. He's got people swept up in the miracles, and he's trying to say, hey, here's what this is really like. If you really want to do this, here's some tough things. He's pouring all the sand on the sifter, and he's trying to find the people who will make it through. He's trying to, the chaff from the wheat. Is that the phrase? I don't know. I think of like searching for dinosaur bones. When you were a kid, you'd pick up sand from a river and shake it and hope you get rocks in it, right? He's trying to sift out this large crowd. He knows that a crowd following Jesus is not the same thing as what his church he's trying to establish is. That someone who attends all of his miracles isn't the same thing as one of his devoted disciples. And he says it not because he's a jerk. It sounds so mean. He doesn't say it because he's mean or a jerk. It's because he's skilled mountain guide. He's saying, you got to be serious about the effort it's going to take for you to do this. You got to be real serious about it. You don't just become a disciple. You don't just say, I think I'm going to just like be a disciple today. I think I'll just do it. I've been following him for a while. I think I'll just be one. It's not something that you just desire either. You're not like, you know what, I just think I want to be one today. You can have all the want to. You can have all of the want to. You can be in the right place. But without intentional actions and intentional choices, it's just a sentiment. You're not really participating. This is the challenge he's throwing at them. Hey, if you really want to do this, here's some tough stuff. He's not looking for the large crowd to follow him, right? He's trying to intentionally sift them through. He's trying to find people who are intending to follow him through all of their life. We have a really tough relationship with this word love and hate. I think that anyone still perturbed by If anyone comes to me and doesn't hate their family, anyone still perturbed by this phrasing? I still think it's hard. Thank you. He's like, I don't know, I love my family. So, love and hate, it's a dichotomy. This is where we're going to learn a little bit about Jesus's and ancient teaching styles. So, rabbis do this thing called teaching to the extremes. This will make sense after a second. Say, teach to the extremes. Perfect. So, if you can make one thing completely true in rabbinical teaching, then by nature, the opposite is completely true. Does this make sense? How we're getting? Okay, he does this quite often in Luke. We'll get there. So they're setting up, love is where your allegiance lies. You with me? What you love is where your allegiance fully lies. So by nature, what you hate is, what's the opposite? We're doing teaching to the opposite. If love is where allegiance lies, then hate is where non-allegiance. You have no allegiance, right? It's meaningless. So love is where all meaning is derived. Hate is where no meaning is derived. You can do this over and over. We'll get to that in a second. So love is where all allegiance lies. Hate is where no allegiance lies at all. So later on, he's going to continue in this teaching, and he's going to have a very famous saying in Luke 16. No one can serve two masters. Either you hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to one and hate the other, or despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. This is one of the famous teachings he does. Do you see all the dichotomies in here? So either you hate one and the other, or you are devoted to one and you despise the other. You can't serve both God and money. You see these dichotomies. He's teaching to these extremes. Luke clearly doesn't hate money. Jesus clearly doesn't hate it. He had people who followed him to help support his mission. There were women that followed him that raised money to help make sure they could find places to stay. You can't take it to the full, but they're trying to derive these full meanings out of it. You can't serve two things completely. You have to love one and hate the other. It's not that money is bad. It's that you can only have priority to one. Does that make sense? Allegiance to Jesus needs to be much higher. So high that it's almost like you hate everything else. Do you see this teaching dichotomy? This is a rabbinical teaching. It's lost into the English, but it's so common in old rabbinical teaching styles. So, you teach to this extreme. So if you want to fully love and have allegiance in one way, it's like your relationship to everything else is broken and despised. In comparison to my allegiance with Jesus, to my allegiance to my family and my tribe, where I come from, my job, my things that make me who I am in ancient Near Eastern culture, it's so secondary that it might as well not exist. If Jesus was a politician, it would be the pinnacle of arrogance to make this statement. The pinnacle of being an arrogant person. To say, you need to love me so much that you hate everything else. I mean, imagine that. Imagine somebody like running for like school board being like, you need to fully devote yourself to me so completely that you actually don't even like school children anymore. You got to do everything I say. But he's not a politician. Because Jesus knows the rough terrain of the mountain ahead. He knows the cost of discipleship that it takes to follow. And he knows that if any part of your allegiance on this journey goes to anything more fully than him, you're in deep trouble. You're in deep trouble on the mountain. Because only in your allegiance fully to Jesus do these other things start to find their place and in life and what they truly mean. You start to filter everything through this look first. So it's not, to go back to 16, you can't serve both God and money. But through the lens of serving God, you can see the value money has. Do you see how this starts to willow its way down to make the other things make sense? So through the following of Jesus, you see the value family has. You see the value that those things have, and they all begin to point towards to be safe on your mountain journey together. This is one of the most difficult little sayings and areas I think that Jesus talks about so much. But we have this confused picture of discipleship and the cost of following Jesus pictured in our mind, that we just say, yeah, I'm a disciple. I got it figured out. We're G to G. I'm good to go. But really, it's such a tough challenge. It's fully devoted. I thought we had it. Love to everything. And a detachment to all other things. One of the things that I say this in sermons a lot, but it's one of those things that it came up in my wife and I's premarital counseling. It's come up when I've talked to youth students, when I talk at camps. It's come up in a lot of places. I've talked about it when I do premarital counseling with people. And I say this, and my wife is sadly not in this room to nod along and agree that I'm not just making this up in front of you, sadly. You can ask her afterwards. But we have this thing where both of us have agreed that we have tiered our relationship together in such a way as this. Number one is our faith journey and our connection and love to God. Number two is Ashley. Number two is me to her. That's how we station it. If the choice came between Faith and my wife, she knows she's second. She knows she's second. I know I'm her second. That is not easy. And it all stems from where our full allegiance lies. I see my wife, I love my life. It all comes through my allegiance and discipleship journey through Jesus, to say yes to him always first. And that is not easy. I'm not perfect at it. I'm not trying to be like, you guys got to get this figured out. Because it's a tough journey. There are times I undo my carabiner and try to slide down the hill myself in my journey, and I end up in a deep crevice alone, and I hope that the Sherpa finds me before I freeze to death. Love Jesus, the Sherpa on the mountain. Find the value of your family through it. That's what discipleship is. That's what this sentence is about. That's what Jesus is getting at. Let's pray.